everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of the American Huddle alongside college football analyst Andy Gresh. I'm Haley Outen. We're here to recap Week 2 of the college football season in what many would call a power weekend for the American Conference. Andy, what statement did this league make in Week 2?
Well, more P6 wins for the American, Haley, and that's exactly what they need. They had some strong showings from teams that really didn't play very well last week who came back to play well, and we've got some that are on the struggle bus right now. But overall, the American is as strong as it's ever been.
One of the teams to pick up a marquee victory this past weekend was USF, a big-time win over Georgia Tech. And I want to get your thoughts on a freshman. If you didn't know his name then, you certainly know it now. Wide receiver Terrence Horn. Andy, he returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, not just in the game, but in the first quarter.
Yeah, Haley, it's very rare you see 2 in a game. It's almost like seeing the Yeti if you get 2 in the first quarter. And, you know, they were different kind of returns. As you can see here, there's some great blocking, and then he's just out the gate down the sideline for the first touchdown there for Terrence Horn. I know he caught one a little bit later on, but when you see him here, lines up under it, some pretty good coverage from Georgia Tech, and then there he goes, gets some blocking, he picks it up down the sidelines, an exciting young player. And look, if you want to beat P6 opponents, you need stuff like this to happen, and really it turned out to be big for USF. They needed as many points as they could get.
The American Special Teams Player of the Week. What are the chances that teams are kicking to Terrence Horn in the weeks ahead?
They will, because some people need to actually touch the stove before they get burned. But I'll tell you right now, if we see 2 kickoff returns, 4 touchdowns by the same player in one game this year in the American the rest of the way, I would be surprised, let alone somebody do it in the first quarter. Pretty amazing.
Well, it's the first time ever that this has happened in the short history of the American Athletic Conference, and maybe a special teams player that can give Tony Pollard a run for his money, the back-to-back special teams player of the year. But keeping on the trend of USF, I wanted to get your thoughts on the quarterback situation there. It seems like Blake Barnett has really taken the reins of this offense, and he really showed some true leadership in the fourth quarter, using his legs to get 2 key touchdowns.
Yeah, I think it's growing. You can see that Barnett is settling in as the starting quarterback, and again, they needed every bit of every extra effort they could get to be able to beat this Georgia Tech team. And you mentioned those 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. You see him there in the pocket standing tall. There's one of those scores. And then, you know, little quick smoke. That's the first quarter touchdown that went to Terrence Horn. I think Blake Barnett is settling in quite nicely, and that is a part of the game for him that has got to come along and be a consistent part of this USF offense, him running the ball.
USF has won 6 of their last 7 against Power 6 opponents, and they'll head to Chicago this weekend for a game at Soldier Field against Illinois.
How awesome is that? That's pretty cool to go into a big-time venue like that. I know Bears fans are hurting a little bit after that 1-point loss to the Packers, but they'll have some good football to watch in that stadium on Saturday.
Another team with a big game on the calendar this weekend is Houston. They came up with a big-time win against Arizona, and in large part because of their quarterback, De'Aaron King, the American Offensive Player of the Week. Why is he fitting so well into this offense?
Well, he's explosive, and I think, Haley, as Houston tries to find their way offensively, this is a guy who we know has the big-time arm. You see a great effort there from the wide receiver off of the De'Aaron King throw. But the other part of it, too, is he can run the ball, and he's tough. Like quarterback sneaks, you're getting beat on, but we've seen him run it. Good standing tall in the pocket right there. But he's delivering the football with confidence. And I think in this particular game against Arizona, where Houston rolled him 45-18, Haley, they got rolling in that first half. And I think momentum is a big part of their offense. As you saw King right there, he had the throw, tucks it underneath and takes it in for the score. When Houston gets rolling offensively, combined with what they've got on defense, they're almost unstoppable.
551 yards of total offense for Major Applewhite and the Houston Cougars. A pretty good week to build off of as they get ready to head to Texas Tech.
Okay, we got to give our Ed Oliver update, do we not?
Go for it. This is your time to shine.
5 tackles, a tackle for loss, a deflected pass, and 4 quarterback hurries. That's the part of Ed Oliver that NFL scouts are going to love. Everybody wants quick middle rush now. He's one of those quick middle rushers. So it wasn't the 13 tackle performance that we saw in week 1, but still really good. And I hope people aren't looking at Ed Oliver and being like, well, he didn't get 10 tackles, so I'm not going to pay attention to him this week. You have to watch the game and actually see what this guy's doing. He is still dominating offensive line.
Well, with Houston jumping out to that 38-0 lead, it actually seems like the whole defensive group as a unit is playing particularly well.
Yeah, I think, and when you have a guy in the middle like that in Oliver who's a dominator, it makes it easier for everybody else to do their job. His impact is unmeasurable.
Let's move on to ECU. They were able to bounce back from a devastating Week 1 loss to NC Dowdy Ficklin rocking this weekend. The Pirates coming up with the win over in-state rival North Carolina. Why were the Pirates able to bounce back in Week 2?
Well, I think when you have two quarterbacks and they were able to play two, and we're going to get to that, you know, you add a little pizzazz to the offense. And look, I think North Carolina is hurting right now. We know all the suspensions and the turmoil around that program. But I think the big thing is that Scotty Montgomery's crew bounced back with physicality, athleticism, and they got some good quarterback play. And I think once they got the lead, it was, we're never going to relinquish it. And you had some worries about ECU after Week 1. This calms everyone down there, and I think it makes everybody sort of relax a little bit, and now they can settle into the season.
Reed Herring taking the reins of the offense, getting that start at the quarterback position, but the freshman Holton Ahlers comes into this game in a couple of red zone situations and is able to come up big for the Pirates.
Well, and that's where Scotty Montgomery can add something to his offense by bringing in a guy like Ahlers and then putting him in the red zone. You can see him tuck and go over the top right there for the score. There's one of those 2 touchdowns. And, of course, he's a hometown kid. He's playing to the crowd. And then, what a really good job. I mean, that's just being a running back, putting your head down and then going off what they call the split side. And again, the hometown boy, there's a real deep connection there. We've got an awesome video. His dad is the PA announcer. You're an ECUer, right? You've heard the dad's voice a million times.
Remember that voice very clearly. A very neat moment for a proud father. And ECU, they love playing ACC teams. They've won 7 of their last 9. But let's talk about Cincinnati. Another team off to a great start this season. They had the rivalry game in their hometown. They played in Paul Brown Stadium for the Battle of the Victory Bell in a straight downpour the whole entire game. Ugly game. Nonetheless, Bearcats win that one 21-0. How impressive is their start so far this season?
Well, it's impressive because they won in terrible conditions, right? And, you know, we could sit here and I could wax poetic about, oh, they did this, they did that. When you're playing in a game in a driving rainstorm, especially a rivalry game, you're just looking to survive. And the reason there weren't a ton of points was in part because of the conditions, but in part because the Cincinnati offense is still growing. And I think defensively, they're rounding into shape quite nicely. I think they've done a good job of establishing an identity. They're a tough football team, and I think they're getting back to where they once were before Luke Fickell joined the program.
We saw the freshman Desmond Ridder come into the game against UCLA last weekend. He got the start this weekend. So Luke Fickell is giving the ball to the hands of a freshman. What does that say about the future of this program?
Well, I know we talked about it last week that, you know, I thought Hayden Moore was going to be a guy who was going to get a ton of run and maybe keep the job. And instead they go with the young blood. And in a situation like that where it's gross, it's raining outside, you think, oh, you don't want the young quarterback. They trust the young guy to get it done. They put up enough points to be able to get a win. Again, with Cincinnati, and it's not one of those I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think it's let's temper the expectations. We know the tougher part of the schedule is coming up, but they needed to get off to this good start so those players could validate everything Luke Fickell has been selling them.
Another team looking to get off to a good start this year was Tulane. Of course, they lost the heartbreaker in overtime in Week 1 to Wake Forest, but they were able to bounce back in Week 2 with a very convincing win over Nichols. How important is it for Willie Fritz's program to continue taking these steps forward and notching these wins?
Yeah, look, you know, Nichols, it is what it is in terms of a win, but it was a good bounce for Tulane. And offensively, I think that's what we need to see from Willie Fritz. You know, offensively, we know they could be a juggernaut. Where he's coached before, they put up a lot of points. and that's when you know everything is going right. They're not just a triple option or a zone read team. They can do a little bit of everything in terms of the option game. I think the Willie Fritz offense is very difficult to get ready for, but I think we saw a better brand of offensive football from Tulane this week. The blocking was better. People took care of the football, and I think once they started to get into a rhythm, I know I keep talking about that, but that's really important in college football, especially early on. Once they got in a rhythm, they got rolling.
UCF, another team to pick up a shutout this weekend, this time over South Carolina State. Andy, for quarterback Mackenzie Milton, sort of an uncharacteristic performance for him this weekend in their home opener, 3 interceptions in the first half. How does Milton take things away from this game to help him in the weeks ahead?
Well, I think some of it is, did you see something that you didn't see? You know, was it a coverage issue? What was the reason for the interception? Sometimes there's bad luck interceptions. That's just a great play right there. I can't ding Mackenzie Milton on that interception. Now that one, you got a safety in the middle, you got someone covering the receiver. That one, you kind of throw it up there. And I think what he'll take away from it, Haley, is patience, reminding himself that he doesn't have to make the big play. Right there, he rolls out of the pocket. It's just a needless throw. Here's the thing. I hope people nationally don't look at this and say, well, this is why he's not a Heisman candidate. He's going to have moments where he's going to go, and the Superman S is going to be on underneath the jersey, and he's going to lead UCF to some big wins. So I hope this doesn't ding him long term, and I'm confident he'll balance it out in terms of the Heisman resume with future performances in the American. But he's got to remember, play within himself and stay within the system. A couple of those throws, he was outside the system.
Milton doesn't have his best game yet. The Knights still win 38-0. And how important is that other people around Milton are able to step in and contribute when their veteran quarterback isn't having the best game?
Yeah, I think it's two things. One is, yeah, other people step up. So you would think that people nationally, the voters would be able to look and see that this is a much more complete football team than just Mackenzie Milton. But I also think, too, that, and with all due respect to South Carolina State, you've won 14 games in a row. They've played big games. I think maybe for the football team in general, and for Josh Heupel to drive home is, can't take any opponent lightly. They did beat him 38-0, but again, they've got to remember how they got to this point where they've now won 15 in a row, and that is by playing tough, respecting everybody, and playing good in first halves. They've been really good coming out of the gate during this win streak.
Let's move on and talk about the West Division opener, Memphis at Navy. Andy, I know you had some bold predictions going into this game. What we didn't factor in was potential weather, and I think we saw a much more conservative game than originally anticipated. But Navy, the defense, coming up big in this one, forcing 4 turnovers, leading to the midshipmen earning this week's Defensive Player of the Week honors with safety Sean Williams.
Yeah, and you and I talked to Sean Williams at Media Day down in Newport, and we found a humble kid and a guy who, you know, Ken Niumatalolo couldn't talk enough about. And look, when you're down, you got to find a guy to make plays, and he was able to make a few. Just like offensively, they found some guys to make plays. They're trailing 12. Malcolm Perry scores. And then how about this name, Zach Abey, among, what do they have, like 10 quarterbacks now at Navy because of all the strain and strife that they went through last year at that position. They got multiple people they can go to, and they need guys like Sean Williams to make big-time plays in these games, because I think Navy will even tell you there isn't elite talent defensively with Navy, but what they can do is be heady, play smart, and be where they're supposed to be, play within the scheme.
Navy forces 4 turnovers, yet only wins by 1 point. What do you take away from that?
That's a gritty, gutty win against a team who just feels like they're snake bitten against Navy in terms of Memphis. And I think Navy understood 2 things. Number one, they needed to bounce back. I'm sure they weren't happy with the loss at Hawaii. Again, Hawaii won this weekend, so we're going to look very differently at that Navy loss later in the year. But I think it was the whole, okay, how resilient are we? We know that the cadets have a way different structure to their day than all the other athletes in the American. And I think it showed that they're as tough as we think they are, both mentally and physically.
Let's take a look at some of the other results from around the conference this past weekend. A team that I wanted to touch on was Tulsa. Now, this is a team that just a year ago was 2-10.
Yeah.
They come out and win week 1 against a very good FCS opponent, and then they hit the road to Texas and play toe-to-toe with the Longhorns, only losing that one 28-21. Where is Tulsa at this point compared to last year?
Well, I still think the rebuild is happening for Phil Montgomery, and to go to Texas and to put up a good performance against a Texas team that is not vintage Texas right now, that's still a really good performance coming off of their win against the FCS opponent. But I still think we got to be realistic about Tulsa. They lost so much a couple years ago. That rebuild is still happening. If they can be a 500 team this year, I think that'd be a real nice jump coming off the 2-10 season. A good performance against Texas. I think there's some stuff there they can build on, especially offensively, but it shows you sort of where they're at right now. They're about this far away. When they get to this far away, then we're going to start to see them playing even more competitive games against teams like Texas.
Temple is a team coming off of a loss this weekend. In fact, an 0-2 start to their year. Very surprising for many heading into this season. However, the Owls have come up with probably some of the most unbelievable individual plays we've seen all season. It's been all sorts of crazy in Philadelphia. What is going on with Temple?
Well, I think right now defensively they got some problems. It's a couple weeks in a row now where it's not like they've given up massive point totals, but the opponents they're playing, they should be able to handle. And I know that you had some return issues, and actually they got a return against Villanova to kind of stay in the game. But, you know, Buffalo lost to Albany the week before, an FCS opponent, and then they turned around and they beat Temple. I think, yes, offensively, they may be struggling a little bit, but Jeff Collins is rooted in defense, and I don't see a Temple defense right now.
Blocked punt right there, recovered in the end zone for a touchdown. Their special teams
has
come up big.
2 weeks in a row, a special teams touchdown has kept them in the game. And then there's some good offensive ingenuity right there. You draw it up, you run the reverse, and then I've seen that multiple times now in college football. That's the next layer of those option plays.
That was a two-point conversion.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you can pull it up and throw it. I think we forget that those kinds of plays can happen and that you're allowed to do that. You can coach players up to do it, but Temple's got to find their way, and it's got to start defensively. They've got to start skunking people again.
They've got some good plays in that playbook, just looking to come out on the winning end here in the weeks ahead. They'll have a chance to take on Maryland this weekend. But, Andy, I want to get your thoughts. What has been the biggest surprise to you up to this point so far in the season?
Well, I think the fact that USF has played as well as we thought they could, and it's 2 weeks in a row now. And look, Georgia Tech's a real opponent now, and giving up that many points. I know Charlie Strong's not going to be happy, but when you think about who they went against, I mean, that's like going against Navy. It's the exact same scheme, so it's pretty difficult. I think the fact that Houston is 2-0 as well and looked as good as they did against another P6 opponent in Arizona. So that's kind of the takeaways in terms of the good. You know, there are some stuff and some teams that are on the struggle bus, and we'll see if they can fix it here in week 3. But I would say Houston and USF, to me, right now, the big takeaways, with Cincinnati not far behind. I'm curious to see Cincinnati against a good American opponent, and then we can really judge where they're at.
Who made the biggest leap in week 2?
I would say Houston, because we saw their offense come along. If De'Aaron King is going to play that way, then Houston is very live to maybe get back to a New Year's Six bowl because they have Ed Oliver. I like where they're going offensively. They just got to find a way to keep it up. I mean, we know who they are defensively because of the big boy in the middle. Offensively, I think we're starting to see De'Aaron King grab control of that offense and make it his.
This conference picking up power wins in both weeks 1 and 2. How is that impacting the narrative of this league?
Well, I think that it's continuing what is out there already, Haley, and that is this league is good. They should be there with the big boys of the proverbial Power 5. That's why we say Power 6. And they're as good as anybody. They're beating teams in crossover games. The American is doing what the American has done the last 2 years. And what they're doing now, I think, is now we're in the back half of the first decade of the American. We're seeing that it is sustainable in a lot of these places, at USF, at UCF, and there are some big-time schools who can be factors nationally year in and year out. To me, that's the big takeaway right now. If you play a team in the American, especially those Florida schools right now, be ready for a fight because they can beat anybody.
It's been an exciting first 2 weeks of football across the American. Looking forward to another exciting week ahead in week 3 of the college football season. Andy, thanks for joining us here in the studio as always.
Of course, I can't wait.
It's great. We're going to keep the conversation going all week long. Make sure to keep it here on Twitter at @theamerican_FB or follow along on Facebook as well as we continue to bring you wraparound coverage this college football season.